Go ahead.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. We appreciate everyone attending. I'm Kathy Dowd, and I'm a consultant with Impact Talent Collective, and I specialize in employer branding and recruitment communications here. So I'll be the segment's producer today, and I'll be monitoring the chat and the questions and answers area. So if you have anything that you'd like to put in there, I'll make sure that I'll bring it, forward to our presenters today. Before we get started, a few housekeeping items. Please feel free to share your LinkedIn profile in the chat so you can connect with others on the call and we can connect with you as well. And then also feel free to put any comments or talk with each other in the chat also during the session. So if you have any questions also for our co-hosts, put those in the chat, pop those in there, and I'll make sure that they see those as well. So I'll be monitoring that area throughout. And now I'd like to turn it over to Deb, who will be our host today.
Thanks, Kathy. I appreciate you kind of manning the ship for us today. So, hello, everyone. I am Deb Horowitz. I am the founder and CEO of Impact Talent Collective. We are a fractional recruitment, marketing, and HR technology consulting firm. So, as Kathy said, I will be your co-host today. And Carlos, you want to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. Great to see you out there. I'm Carlos. I have over 15 years experience within recruitment technology, sourcing outreach, and employer brand, primarily within healthcare, but also within HR consulting and technology. And it's a pleasure to be here.
Terrific. Thank you. So there's been so much talk about AI in the talent acquisition space, and some things that you might be reading is that talent acquisition is really driving AI adoption in most companies these days. It's not IT that's driving it, it is talent acquisition. And so Carlos and I got together about a month ago and we're talking through all things AI. And it dawned on us that a lot of the conversations that we're having with clients and potential clients is around how to use the technology side of AI, right? For, um, you know, helping to take notes for interviews or schedule those interviews or other technology just to improve the processes. And there's not really been a lot of conversation around how AI is currently impacting the candidate journey. And within that, it's the recruitment marketing strategy piece of it. So that's going to be our focus for today's fireside chat, is really to get more into that side of the business and what's happening right now, and then where we see we might be going in the future. And obviously, the future with AI could be tomorrow, right? It's changing so fast. Um, so the first thing that I really wanted to talk about today was the impact of AI. And the first impact is really around the erosion of trust. And it's happening on both sides of the desk. So the candidates, obviously, we've been working on that mistrust for a while, the whole black hole ATS experience, right, Carlos?
Yes.
And so we've got some guilt to bear there, some responsibility for bringing them on down that pathway. But beyond that, AI is just kind of magnifying things and really creating a whole new set of issues where the candidates don't want AI to look at their resume. They want a human being to be looking at their resume and evaluating things. They're not really trusting AI to do the interviews.
Mm.
In fact, I was reading recently that a gentleman had agreed to have an AI agent actually conduct the initial interview for him and was kind of excited to go through that process, because it's new for a lot of people. And the interview had been going really, really well. And then they get to the question about um, really giving him an opportunity to share why he felt he would be most qualified for the position. And boy, was he ready for that question. And he just went full speed into his whole spiel about it. And what he noticed was, because he could see the transcript of what AI was recording, and what he noticed was that AI had only picked up like the first 3 sentences in answer to that question and
Mm.
was repeating it like line by line by line by line by line. It was going down, and it was in a death spiral at that
Mm.
moment. And he was flabbergasted. He didn't know what to do, how to change it, how to get it out of that mode. So he really had to disconnect on the interview, and knew that probably if it was just some sort of ranking system, that he would have been given a 0 for not completing the interview and would not move on in the process. Those kinds of stories get out there and they get magnified, right, through social media. And it just really helps to perpetuate that mistrust. But then, equally on the employer side in talent acquisition, we're not trusting the candidate. Is that resume AI written, and not for real, right? Or maybe exaggerated. Is the person that I'm interviewing the same person that shows up for onboarding? And in some cases, it isn't. Recruiters have caught that, hey, wait a minute, who is this guy that just walked in for onboarding? That's not the person I interviewed for the job, you know? And so I think that there are ways, certainly we talk about it all the time at Impact Talent, about how to build back that trust and how to build back that relationship. And I know that you're going to be speaking a lot to that later, in this conversation this morning. So the second thing I think that we need to take a look at in terms of how it's impacting us right now is candidate behavior. So normally, over the last almost 30 years, if a candidate was looking for a job, they go to a job board, right? They do their job search that way, or they might go to Google or Bing and do a job search. But now they're going to LLMs, they're going to ChatGPT, and they're looking for all of this information about where to search. They're also doing reputation queries about companies so that they can learn more about the overall organization, especially if it's not a well-known brand, right? There was a story about a woman who had received a cold email from a recruiter about a job opportunity. And it seemed, right up her alley. Everything sounded really, really good, but she wasn't familiar with the brand. So she did a search on ChatGPT, and what the overview returned to her was not only information about the position itself or about the candidate experience, but it also gave her insight into the consumer side of things. Like, how are they treating their customers? What kind of feedback are they receiving from a consumer standpoint, right? And all of the stuff starts to kind of blur the lines between what we're managing on the EVP side of things and what our, consumer marketing counterparts are managing on their side of things, right? And the need to be cognizant now that the line is really blurry. And that AI can bring that to the attention of a candidate. So for quality candidates that we're, that are passive, that we're really trying to attract, we really have to be cognizant of that in the workplace. And then I think the third impact that we're seeing right now is to the job boards directly, right? They don't have to go necessarily to the job boards, so traffic's down. And yeah, I think that is causing alarm throughout the job board industry itself. How do they stay relevant? What part are they going to play in the future of recruitment, right? And we're seeing pivots. Especially like Indeed with their pivots to creating a healthy budget. Very healthy for them. They're getting revenue.
Yes.
maybe not so healthy for our employer clients because they're paying more. But then there's also that pivot from working closely with the programmatic advertising agencies to, get their XML feeds to Indeed, to shutting that completely down this month and going more in the direction of a direct API link, between the ATS and Indeed. And I'm really thinking that a lot of it in conversation with others in the industry, it feels like they're just trying to grab hold
Hmm.
and stay relevant right now, right? They're seeing impact that AI is having, and they're trying to figure out a way to go deep within an employer, right? And deliver data that is not necessarily exposed on an LLM, right? For obvious
Hmm.
reasons, right? This proprietary data. We don't want disposition data out there for the world to see because they're not necessarily going to understand why certain people went through the entire interview process and others were rejected throughout the stages, right? And so you've got all of that going on. And then the last piece of it from my perspective is I got into this business close to 30 years ago. And probably some of my first clients when I got into the space were staffing firms and executive search firms. And what I noticed right away from working with them is they were the very first in the industry to try any. If there was an new media in town, yeah, they wanted to try it. If there was a new tool around, yeah, they were all over it. Anything that would help them to find quality talent faster, more cost effective, it's their business model, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so I've used them kind of as the canary in the coal mine over the
Hmm.
years to say, where is the space going? And what I found was that SIA, which is Staffing Industry Analysts, um, put out a report recently that said that overall job board spend for staffing agencies is way down, like 50% less between 2024 and 2025. Now you could look at that and say, okay, what's really driving that? But I think that AI is having that impact, right? Where the agencies are not seeing it as necessary to use that resource. So therefore they're investing less. And the study went on to say that actually those that spent the least on job boards were growing the fastest, which
Mm.
I find, just incredible information for us to kind of ponder as, as an industry ourselves within talent acquisition. So I think about, this is this has kind of been our foundation for recruitment marketing strategy has been pushing, right? Pushing
Hmm.
that content out to those job boards to help us reach that audience. And if that is not staying as relevant because of AI, then what should we do? Where do we go from here? So I would love to get your thoughts about that.
Wow, a lot to unpack there, Deb. I think you hit on so many different points. First of all, from the consumer standpoint and the candidate standpoint, there's the bleeding line. Candidates are, customers, and customers are candidates as well. So a lot of things to unpack there. And first of all, I really wanted to touch on the current state, the mistrust between candidates, in employers, and then hiring leaders as well when it comes to that ambiguity currently. There's a military term. I'm not a military veteran, disclaimer there, but I like to use the military term VUCA, which stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. It was actually adopted during the Cold War, and really kind of speaks to rapid change, times of unpredictability. And I think that really lends itself to this current state of talent acquisition and AI's impact on it. EVP, you hit on a lot of points there from an EVP standpoint. There's some great tools within AI that can help from a content generation standpoint. Specifically, there are tools like sentiment analysis that can be used to really extract different data points, such as employee surveys, company reviews. It's important for organizations to really embrace their EVP, whether it's organic, whether it's through AI, because candidates will definitely connect the dots if not. Through certainly the pages such as Glassdoor and Reddit, but it's important from that lens. Another thing I wanted to touch on is that specifically you hit on it earlier as far as the push versus pull method. It is definitely a passive candidate engagement market now more than ever with the increase in applications. It really boils down to organizations needing to roll up their sleeves, invest in their sourcing teams, investing in CRMs, texting outreach. Similarly to the consumer marketing standpoint that we touched on earlier, it is about definitely the 5 to 7 touch points that the consumer side a lot of times takes to convert a prospect to a client. Similarly, on the candidate side, you need to convert those passive candidates to formal applicants through those different efforts, whether it's text or whether it's through phone call, whether it's in person. So definitely important to be versatile along those lines. And then also from a standpoint of being, informative, not just asking for the application, whether it's a referral campaign you have going on, a sign-on bonus campaign, being versatile on how you deliver the message, whether it's email, whether it's text, as mentioned. Interesting enough, I think what's interesting during this time as well is organizations are going back, especially in healthcare, to the grassroots campaigns, the on-site hiring events, mail-out campaigns. So that's really, really interesting to see it from that lens as well. I wanted to touch on employee referrals because that's such a key part of source of hire that aligns to the EVP as well. And from that lens, you have different technologies. It's important to keep the process simple. SHRM had an article recently that talked about how a majority of employees refer during their work hours. So, their quote unquote day job, they want to, prime time, utilize that time at home with their families and friends, less time referring to their current employer. So even if there's a, hefty referral bonus program in place, it still is a majority during that work hour time frame. So, there's some great tools out there. We, in my past employer, utilized a texting outreach conversational AI, where we utilized the engagement started with the referring employee would provide the phone number of the referred candidate to the conversational AI, and then the conversational AI would take the baton from there and complete the process for application. So was successful, but at the same time, the people behind the scenes were, picking the baton at the interview and selection process to ultimately go through the hiring process as well. So there are some great tools like Aaron, which is a AI-powered employee referral platform that, from there can engage talent. And it's very powerful in that it can prompt networks from the employee itself and then make those suggestions based on the vacancies available. Healthcare organization. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just thinking, in the past, or what I've seen, and not in all circumstances, but a lot of companies would put a employee referral program in place and kind of set it and forget it, And so what we're seeing now is you really have to market that thing. It's no longer just to set it and forget it. even if you're using technology, you still need to be out there, reminding the employees that this is something that you know, are passionate about. You want them to refer talent and for them to constantly be a talent scout for you and be on the lookout for talent, not necessarily just for their department that they're in, but anybody in the organization, right? And so we're seeing a lot more marketing campaigns towards that, that we're working to create for our clients. So I just wanted to add that. But yeah, I think it's not to be totally reliant on technology, but to keep that human centric piece in there, if you will.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And when it comes to that technology, there needs to be strong change management in place. Again, end user adoption is very big. If you have a great technology, you don't have a broken process, it's only going to be as successful as the folks behind the scenes that are really completing the workflow of the hiring process as well. So whether it's the candidate, or excuse me, whether it's the recruiter, the sourcer, the hiring leader, they play a key role in that selection process. I think Patrick just had a question about the AI solution for employee referrals. Aaron is the one I referenced earlier. At my previous employer, we utilized Paradox for the texting component that would prompt the candidate to complete the conversation with the conversational AI. So heads up there.
Yeah.
And so,
yes,
go ahead,
Erin,
yes.
Erin for Erin. Yes, good question.
Absolutely. There's some really interesting case studies recently of high volume hiring. Certainly, Aaron is, kind of in the mix there, but there's organizations like Chipotle recently that shared about their conversational AI that they're utilizing that really kind of helps from a standpoint of high volume, over 20,000 seasonal workers. They've decreased time to fill from 12 days to 4 days. You have Unilever out there that is hiring over 30,000 hires annually, and from they're using a little bit different AI model and a skills-based assessment model through logic and gamification to scale down. They said they had over 1.8 million applicants, so to dwindle down from that number, quite a hefty lift.
Yeah.
If it's you're not using some sort of technology to help vet the candidates further. Past experience there for myself, we use conversational AI for vetting of in healthcare, our hard to fill nursing based hires. And we were connecting with candidates at all hours of the day. Over 50% of the candidates we were connecting with were after 5 p.m. before 7 a.m. And since deployment had over 3,000 hires, which was the majority in all nurse-based hires. So a majority of our vacancies, which were about 30% of our vacancies, were nursing-based hires. So definitely the hard to fill area there that was successful for us. But to your point about some of that mistrust earlier, it is really interesting. Actually, Paradox and McDonald's had the issue recently that everyone's well aware about the breach of data that was due to a really simple process, just establishing guardrails and multi-factor authentication. There was a lack thereof, and interesting enough, Paradox owned the issue, and it seems to be been resolved. But over 60 million users' data was impacted due to hackers, and so really can be quite the multiplier if we think of industries such as healthcare and education, with huge impact on ransomware for patient data, and certainly on the education side with student and academic data as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with AI, even if you're using it, some applicant tracking systems now are saying, that their AI tools can write the job postings for them and things of that nature to make them more job ads, right? Type of thing. And you know, what we hear is going on out there is that from a technical perspective, they're doing a good job of doing that. But when it comes to creating that emotional tie,
Mm,
right? uh, Like something that a human would be thinking about needing to add to that job posting, it's falling flat right now. Now, check with me in 6 months. It could be an entirely different story, maybe even in 6 weeks. But, I think that we really need, to your point, is to truly vet every part of the process and make sure that we understand where the limitations fall with using, the technology, and how do we fill that gap with the human centric approach, and um, make sure that the candidate feels like they're not just a number, right? That they're truly being heard and seen all along in the process. And that brings up an interesting point, because you're talking about um, CRMs, and getting into that. And I don't know if you're going to go any deeper into that, so I don't want to steal your thunder. But having those touch points, they can be automated through AI,
mhm.
but making sure that you're um, not just using their generated content necessarily, because that could be templated. So you want to make sure that there's a differentiator going on there between what you're sending out and nurturing campaigns to candidates versus, what your competitor down the street that might be using that same tool is, how they're doing their outreach. And are you sounding the same? Or, are you truly, delivering your brand message?
100%. And when it comes to that, to your point about competitors, in authenticity, you definitely want to have an authentic voice when it comes to your, content that you're sharing to the masses. Um, there are definitely those risks involved. There are definitely, I think the other piece to it is an investment from a time and since definitely from a dollar standpoint, because there's a lot of low cost, no cost, or small investment opportunities um, to partner with your consumer marketing team, as we talked a little bit about earlier, to
Mhm.
leverage the build of the EVP, the build of the content. Um, Previously, I worked very closely with our consumer marketing team to build out a three-tiered recruitment marketing strategy, and it really helped lift applicants about 20% year over year. So, from
Yeah,
that standpoint, the cost was our time, but there wasn't a significant lift financially from a investment standpoint. And these vendors can be very, very costly from that perspective as well. So
yeah,
there are those aspects as well.
yeah. And I think, to your point, even with our clients, we we are working in conjunction with their marketing team, with their consumer marketing team. So, it's like us, talent acquisition and consumer marketing, because there there can be value in bringing someone from the outside in to help guide the overall brand messaging from an EVP perspective, um, so that you really get down to those, fine tune that differentiation, and we can be a little bit more um cognizant of how others are positioning themselves in the market, right? Especially from a competitive standpoint. So there is value there, but I would say from a fractional perspective, it is much more cost effective to partner with an organization like us than it would be perhaps, the more traditional recruitment marketing firms that do come with those high price points, that are delivering the same types of results that a fractional agency can do for a client. I also think that we're seeing, to your point about the career fairs, we're seeing a lot more just like FaceTime kind of things that people they want to connect with a human being. They want to understand, that organization from a human being to human being perspective, right? So I don't know, did you talk about video at all? Did I just completely blank out or
I
did you discuss it?
I didn't, but that's a great point. Before I dive into that, though, I think it's funny that I was smiling because just this week I saw on LinkedIn, one of my contacts was sharing the authentic voice is now typos. So that is
Yes.
that's kind of a state of the union, if you will. But yeah, as far as videos, oh, that's a great point. That can be so organic, certainly. Employee testimonials certainly speak volumes, especially going back to employee referrals. And, from that lens, and we've done a lot of data around, a lot of research on that in my past employer around, employees want to hear from other employees. They don't necessarily want to hear the script from the C-suite
Exactly.
as much as they want to hear. Nurses want to hear from other nurses.
Yeah.
Dietary and nutrition professionals want to hear from other dietary and nutrition professionals and so on. So
Yeah.
that can be
Yeah.
very organic, and through socials, through career site, through through different channels from that perspective, and can live as long as you want it to ultimately as well.
Yeah. And that raises an interesting point. I think, even your career site needs to be more continually updated now because of the LLMs.
Hmm.
So it's not to your advantage anymore to do maybe a once a year refresh on the career site. And I'm not talking about like totally revamp it every 3 months, but definitely keep the content fresh. Change out the videos, do things that are going to spark the interest of the LLMs and those people that may have come on to the site a few months ago, because to your point, you were talking about 7 touches. So maybe they visited the site in May, but they didn't see anything of value or they weren't ready, to make a move. But now they're back and it's July and everybody wants to feel like things are personalized and things are fresh. I mean, that's just the consumer world that we live in, right? So if they see that everything kind of looks the same as the last time they were there, that could have a negative impact on whether or not they choose to apply. So it's it's like thinking through all of these things, right, with regard to how AI is impacting things.
I think going back to the content piece, though, you were touching on as well is, certainly investment is one thing, but there's a lot of great data out there. Organizations have applicant data, they have employee data, they have their consumer data, and from that standpoint, whether you're using AI organically, you could simply pulse check on real time on your career site how that candidate experience was.
Yeah.
Certainly pulse check if it's annually. We didn't use AI for our with previous employer as far as pulse checks. We did annual surveys for non-hires, new hires, and um, also our hiring leaders and recruiters evaluated themselves as part of the application process, the interview and selection process, and then onboarding as well. So we got some great data from that lens, which we can feed back to our
Mhm.
EVP engine as well. So yeah, definitely some great data out there that can be leveraged to really holistically help you in that space.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So what else are you thinking about?
Well, I think investment wise, from a technology perspective, you have talent intelligence platforms. Certainly, I think the key piece of that before even diving into that is coming down to the internal versus external application process. It needs to be succinct. It needs to be similar. You have instances where you have internal applicants go through the external application process, whether intentionally or unintentionally. HRS teams love that. Um, But, when it comes to it, excluding demographic questions, excluding background check questions, that process should be the same. It should be the same ATS. Ideally, you have platforms like Fuel 50, you have platforms like Eightfold that,
Yeah.
definitely kind of feed in from a career development standpoint, from a internal mobility standpoint, and then skill-based hiring standpoint. But when it comes to externals, now you have ATS platforms that have talent intelligence functionality, like
Mhm.
iCIMS, like Seekout, like several different vendors along those lines that connect to the talent networks. And so, it's really interesting. That's definitely ripe for disruption as well, because of the nature. You saw Workday just recently acquired HiredScore, so
Yeah.
they're putting a lot of attention to that. Um, and so, one interesting platform. Gotcha. Oh, okay. I thought that was a question for us.
Nope.
Um, yes. So from that lens, a lot of disruption are along those lines as well. And
Yeah.
feeding back to how organizations are using that data to be then able to funnel, whether it's for their EVP, internal candidates, external candidates, and the like, and vice versa.
Yeah. That sounds great. So, lot to unpack. And this is being recorded, so we will send it out to everybody so you can look back through it and kind of see, our thoughts about where things are headed and where things are right now. And we are always open to having a conversation with anyone about where you're at right now and what do you see is, the best move for your future. And then one thing I did want to add, so a lot of times in conversations, talent leaders will say, well, I'm spending X number of dollars a month on job boards. If I reduce that spend, I don't want my higher ups, my C-suite, to think that I can live without those dollars, right? And take it away from my budget for next year. So, what are people doing, right? And from what we gleaned from the SIA report is that the staffing firms are moving towards automation. So
Mhm.
AI automation, right? The AI chatbots. That's where they're heading. That's where they're reinvesting their dollars, and then also to employee referral. Um, so what we've talked about is very similar to the direction that they're moving in as well. And I think if you combine that with really great content, the right employer brand messaging, that really differentiates you in the marketplace, then you're going to see that maybe you don't need to be as reliant on job boards as you were previously. In fact, I think Marriott said 2025, no more paid job board advertising. And they're doing just fine. Now they're a huge brand. Everybody is
Mhm.
kind of familiar with their brand. And so not everybody has that luxury, right? For some, it's still really educating the market on their brand and their EVP. But I think for those that are in that position, we're going to see more of them make that switch in the coming weeks and months. Be just because of what AI is doing to disrupt our normal recruitment marketing strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. And Marriott actually, they had, as you indicated, they had the Just Be campaign, which, it's speaking with a couple folks from over there, it was a low investment opportunity that they built out from the content they had, they fed in and really kind of grew out accordingly. So yes, absolutely agree from that lens.
I think we can open it up to any questions that anybody has at this time. Kathy, do we see any new questions coming in?
I don't, but I have, you might want to, can you check on your end as well? I'm not
Yeah.
in the question mode anymore. I saw the first couple.
Oh, it looks, yeah, it looks good on our side with that. So I think what we can do is give some people some time back in their day. You guys still there? Oh, I
Yes,
thought I lost you.
Yes,
We're
no,
here.
we're here. Yes.
So I'll give some people some, I'll give you guys some time back in your day, an extra 20 minutes.
That's
I
a
know
good,
Christmas
everybody
came
runs
early.
from,
yes.
yeah, everybody's running from meeting to meeting. So we really appreciate the time that you've taken to spend with us today. We hope the content was educational and informational. And feel free to reach out to us at any time. You can visit us at impacttalentcollective.com. You can reach out to me at Deborah, Debra, at impacttalentcollective.com if you're looking for any follow-ups to our discussion. And we look forward to seeing you again real soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.